So at the dawn of the 90s in Peru, the country was in a massive debt, and the population was suffering from malnutrition. It was estimated that over half of them were living in abject misery. Detailed Time magazine in 1990. Overnight, the price of gasoline jumped from 10 cents per gallon to more than $2, and food prices rose 300%. The 1990 presidential elections were shaken up when dark horse candidate Alberto Fujimori challenged the white neoliberal candidate. Due to his Japanese ancestry, the public affectionately called him El Chino, or Chinaman. He campaigned on a somewhat left-leaning populist platform and netted 62.4% of the popular vote. Upon entering office, he promptly accepted world aid, began pressing Congress for more aggressive means to catch Abimael Guzman, the Shining Path leader who had evaded capture for 12 years as the terrorist group bombed infrastructure and slaughtered civilians, and Congress wasn't in total agreement with that. So in 1992, Fujimori led a self-coup by shutting down Congress and suspending the Constitution and judiciary. This act was denounced by the international community, but allegedly supported by the Peruvian public. After all, they had to deal with the Shining Path. In May 1992 alone, there were reported 123 terrorist attacks, and 112 of them were alleged by the Fujimori government to be by the Shining Path, who were ramping up their violence in response to the coup. Fujimori issued decrees with harsh penalties for terrorists and collaborators. Certain areas with heavy Shining Path activity were labeled emergency zones, where constitutional rights were suspended to fight the terrorists. After July 16, 1992 bomb killed 25 people and injured 155 more in Lima, Peruvian authorities increased surveillance, which led to the apprehension of Abimael Guzman and the fall of Shining Path. While Fujimori was celebrated for stamping out the Shining Path, it didn't obscure his major flaws. In 1994, his own wife, Susanna Higuchi, denounced him as a corrupt tyrant. Fujimori was eligible to run for president again in 1995, the same year that Susanna filed for divorce, and Fujimori's eligibility worked out for a bunch of parties, including the U.S. and the head of Peru's National Intelligence Service, Vladimiro Montesinos. Under Montesinos' firm grip, to the point that he was the de facto leader of Peruvian affairs, Fujimori had abandoned his campaign platform and enacted policies more aggressive than his neoliberal opponent had championed. This included the Fuji Shock, or making state-owned enterprises private and implementing structural adjustment for IMF loans, which, as you've noticed, has come up a lot in this episode. Montesinos remarked about Fujimori once, "He is completely malleable. He does nothing at all without me knowing." The administration spent a lot of money bribing Peruvian media to not question Fujimori, in addition to producing more trash TV. Montesinos had been pocketing $1 million a year from the CIA since 1990, with the assurance that he would serve U.S. business interests, like when he gave U.S. company Newmont a majority ownership of a gold mine. Montesinos and Fujimori were aligned with the plot to implement Plan Verde, a military op by the Peruvian armed forces to control the country via media censorship and the genocide of indigenous and impoverished Peruvians. In 1991, the National Population Program was developed by the Peruvian National Population Council. Beginning in 1993, 200,000 women would be sterilized without their consent before the decade was over, which was facilitated in part by the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. And their justification was the 1974 Kissinger Report, which encouraged low populations in developing countries to serve U.S. interests. Speaking of U.S. facilitation of oppression in South America, there were the revelations about the Archives of Terror. Found in 1992 inside an old abandoned building in Paraguay were documents detailing the secret kidnappings, tortures, and killings of thousands of Latin Americans, mostly leftists, by security services of Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay in the U.S.'s Operation Condor. Remarked Castro on the hypocrisy of American benevolence in 1994. "Those who blockade us have had good relations with South Africa, excellent relations with Chile, where thousands of people have been killed, in Argentina, where thousands of people are missing."